civil society. Do you know civil society? What does civil society do? How does it benefit citizens? Why news about civil society activities is generally negative? How does civil society partner with governments? Is civil society only in India or internationally? This podcast series brings you some answers to questions like these. Dr. Rajesh Tandon is the storyteller of civil society in this podcast series. Rajesh is an electronics engineer from IIT Kanpur with an MBA from IIM Kolkata and a PhD in management from Case Western Reserve University, USA. After an initial teaching and research career, he started working in civil society, forming PRIA in 1982. He is an internationally acclaimed civil society thought leader, been an advisor to many ministries of Government of India, technical advisors to the World Bank, the UN System, Commonwealth Foundation. He has supported the incubation of dozens of civil society organizations in India, Asia, and internationally, as well as provided leadership to many of them. He has been a prolific writer and speaker on these issues. This is his first podcast series. In each episode, he will share some aspect of civil society contributions based on his own experiences and interactions. In this episode, Rajesh focuses on civil society and literacy.
I am Rajesh Tandon. It was in January 1977 that I first traveled to southern Rajasthan, Kherwada block in district of Udaipur in India. I was interested in doing field work for my PhD in management. There I looked at and observed literacy classes for rural women being conducted by volunteers of my host organization, Seva Mandir, the Temple of Service in translation. Walking through the villages late in the afternoon and in the evening, I could see excitement among rural women to come for 1 hour of literacy class. These classes were held mostly in the open under a tree or in the veranda of a school building. A younger person, mostly girls of the age of 17 or 18, who had completed 8th grade education, were taking literacy classes. I also noticed that among 20-25 women, there were 8 or 10 young children and at times 2-3 goats also sitting around. It looked as if the whole village was attending a literacy class. Seva Mandir's effort in promoting literacy among women in rural Rajasthan was one of many such efforts going on after independence in India. When India became independent 78 years ago, in 1947, total literacy rate for the country was only 18%. While new primary schools were opened by the government and formal schooling picked up, literacy for adult women and men remained an arena where many local voluntary organizations promoted such initiatives on their own, sometimes with local support, sometimes with charitable endowment, and sometimes through volunteers. Therefore, by the time I visited southern Rajasthan, literally 3 decades after independence, literacy rate among rural women remained low in many parts of the country. But Seva Mandir was not unique. Andhra Mahila Sabha in Greater Hyderabad and Telugu speaking regions was undertaking similar programs. Bengal League in and around Calcutta and 24 Parganas. Kasturba Trust near Indore, and of course, many similar efforts near Pune and Nashik. All these initiatives were voluntary initiatives by smaller organizations, locally rooted, mobilizing resources on their own, committed to make Indians literate, especially women in rural areas. They attempted to promote mother tongue literacy. Seva Mandir was undertaking programs not in Hindi but in local Bagadi because they realized that mother tongue is the starting point from which you can learn to read and write because you already know the meanings. Innovations in teaching methods, in pedagogy, were taking place in the form of peer learning, meaning bringing a social group together to learn, not just individual learning. Such a peer group provided support to women and encouraged them to continue learning literacy. Literacy centers also became a place for conversations about life. In fact, taking advantage of the emerging discussions on awareness generation in the period, many organizations, like I mentioned, also started explicitly awareness raising programs. So, learning of literacy was not like in classroom for primary education, not like A for apple and B for bus, but it was land, spelling of land, and then discussion on meaning of land for them. So, land productivity, displacement from land, knowledge of land records, all these issues were intertwined with learning how to read and write land and land records. These experiments influenced the first national policy in India called the National Adult Education Program, launched in 1978 on October 2. This program learned a great deal from the practice of such voluntary organizations. It included not just learning to read and write and learning numeracy, but also functionality, linking literacy to production in land, to health, to water, and also creating an awareness on social human values. NAP was the first such program anywhere in the world where learning of social values of harmony, cohesion, respect was integrated in national literacy program. And these programs were being delivered by those organizations, and many others on the ground. Government's own capacity to deliver these nationwide was extremely limited at that time. While India was making these efforts to promote literacy, examples of literacy work from other parts of the world were also becoming available. Some countries adopted a rapid literacy program through national campaigns, most notably China, Vietnam, Nicaragua, for example. Within a period of 10 years, China made sure that all its population became functionally literate, all women and men. And therefore, similar efforts in Vietnam and Nicaragua bore such results. In such countries, future socio-economic development was thus built on the foundation of universal literacy as their campaigns and investments in literacy for adults paid dividends. It was realized that while extensive promotion of primary education was taking place countrywide, the effort to make adult population literate was slowing down by mid 1980s. National Literacy Mission was launched in India in 1988 with a focus on total literacy campaigns. These campaigns were designed based on the experience of Kerala. Now, Kerala in India always stood out for very high literacy rates right from early independence days. And that has been so because of 200 years of history of library movement in Kerala. A Kerala-wide association called CanFed promoted these libraries in the 20th century and extensively invited volunteers to promote literacy. So, Kerala's experience of literacy then was used to promote literacy in other parts of the country. Some lessons were emerging from other parts of the world because civil society organizations in other parts of the world were also working to promote literacy. Their associations were also very important. In India, in 1939, before independence, Indian Adult Education Association was set up with this purpose to promote literacy and adult education. In Asian region, Asia South Pacific Basic Adult Education region-wide non-governmental network was set up in 1964, and India learned a lot from other Asian countries through this network. After the founding of International Council for Adult Education in 1973, an international non-governmental organization, it was possible to draw lessons about literacy and share our experience internationally. International Council for Adult Education, along with many national members, then proposed to United Nations to declare 1990 as International Literacy Year. This led to further galvanization of efforts in promoting functional literacy among men and women around the world. You may think that these efforts could have been taken stronger roots in public policies and programs. But a lot of attention was focused on universal primary education, universal secondary education, and those who dropped out of primary or secondary levels of education, mostly girls in those days, needed separate attention to become functionally, productively literate and educated. So, even today, India's overall literacy rate is 85%, much better than before. But for women, it is 65%. And the gaps are not only between urban and rural, men and women, but also adults in scheduled caste and scheduled tribe communities are still illiterate in larger percentage. You may not realize it, but functional literacy rate for women in Andhra Pradesh is only 65% today. What is the implication of this? First, that civil society organizations, voluntary efforts, locally, nationally, and internationally, helped promote literacy over the last 70, 75 years. Their experiments on the ground produce innovation, which became part of national programs and policies, not only in India, but in other regions of the world. And they continued to provide new ideas about pedagogy as well as they continued to demand public investment in functional literacy. Today, the world has adopted in a large scale digital skills and ideas for everyday functioning. While digital literacy is critical and a lot of work needs to be done, foundation of literacy skills is important even when adults learn to use digital platforms. And in a country like ours, we are beginning to notice a phenomena where more boys are dropping out of secondary education than girls. And this percentage is not small. As of last year, 16 to 30% boys drop out of completing secondary education in states like Assam, Andhra, Bihar, Odisha, Gujarat, and Karnataka. And you may think that girls are proportionately more interested in completing secondary education today than was the case at the turn of independence. Civil society organizations can play an important role in bringing to attention the significance of literacy skills for those boys who are now dropping out at early stage of education. The story of literacy in India and around the world is a story of practice, innovation, and commitment of voluntary organizations, non governmental groups, locally, nationally, and internationally. That role not only needs to be recognized, but perhaps continue to be played because pockets of functional illiteracy are still widespread, not only in India, but in many parts of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us for the future episodes as we continue to explore the evolving landscape of civil society. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts with us.